President and Mrs. Reagan, calling him one of Hollywood's brightest stars, said they are very saddened by the death of their old friend. Judd Rose takes a look at Cary Grant's long career.
Cary Grant was Hollywood's most charming man. Women loved him. Men wanted to be him. He made over 70 films and earned millions. But here's what nobody knew. He took LSD over 100 times in a doctor's office. He cried during sessions. He screamed about his mother. The same man who made audiences swoon was secretly falling apart. When he died, he left $10,000 to his psychiatrist. The King of Charm spent decades terrified of being himself. And the reason will shock you. Cary Grant's story begins with a heartbreak that never really left his family. His older brother, John William Elias Leach, was born on February 9, 1899. Just one day before his first birthday, he died. The official cause was tuberculous meningitis, but family members remembered something worse. They said his mother, Elsie, was holding him when a door slammed shut. The impact crushed the baby's thumb. By the next morning, he was gone. Elsie was never the same. She blamed herself and spiraled into a deep, dark depression. The house grew cold and heavy. The loss poisoned everything. For young Archie, Cary Grant's real name, it felt like growing up inside a ghost story. Nothing was ever fully explained. Only the sadness stayed. When Archie was just 9 years old, something even more confusing happened. One day, his mother was there. The next, she was gone. His father told him she had gone on a long holiday. Then, weeks passed. Then years. The story never changed. He waited for letters, visits, any word. Nothing came. What he didn't know was that she had been locked away in Glenside Hospital, a mental asylum in Bristol. She had been hearing voices, claiming people were trying to poison her. Her mind was slipping fast, but no one told Archie. Eventually, his father told him she had died. So now, he had lost her twice. First, to silence. Then, to a lie. That lie sat deep inside him. He carried it through his teenage years. He carried it into Hollywood. It shaped the way he saw the world and the people around him. He later said it left a sadness in him that never fully disappeared. His father, Elias, didn't make life any easier. He worked as a clothing presser, earning little money and drinking often. The home was poor and broken. Elsie had been the one constant, and now she was gone. Elias drifted in and out, both physically and emotionally. Archie often felt invisible. He tried to disappear into movie theaters and local stages, chasing escape wherever he could find it. He watched the screen and dreamed of becoming someone else. Someone who wasn't stuck. Someone who didn't feel like he'd been forgotten. That boy made his first real break at 13. He couldn't stand the silence at home anymore. He ran away and joined the Bob Pender Troupe, a traveling group of comedians and acrobats. He was forced to come back when they found out he had lied about his age, but he didn't give up. The next year, he got himself expelled from school. It was deliberate. He needed a reason big enough to convince his father to let him leave again. This time, it worked. He joined the troupe officially and signed a 3-year contract. He had room, board, lessons, and a small salary. The stage became his escape. It gave him discipline, performance, and a reason to move forward. It also gave him a new identity, one far from Archie's pain. The expulsion that got him back into the troupe wasn't just about mischief. The record said he was caught in the girls' lavatory and had helped classmates steal something from a nearby town. But his biographer believed he did it on purpose. He needed out. Authorities questioned why he wasn't living with his father. That pressure forced Elias to sign the contract. Within days, Archie was on the road again, performing and learning. 3 days after that expulsion, his new life began. He rejoined the troupe with full permission and a legal agreement. The terms were clear. He'd stay until he turned 18. He'd earn a wage. He'd get dance training. He'd have food and a bed. There were even salary increases based on performance. It was a professional setup, rare for a teenager. But Archie had already forged a fake permission letter before. This time, it was real. He toured all over England. He learned to flip, tumble, and hold a crowd's attention. In 1920, he got on a ship, the RMS Olympic. It was the sister ship of the Titanic. He was just 16. They docked in New York. He was there for a show called Good Times at the Globe Theatre. It ran for 456 performances. That kind of success was rare, especially for a vaudeville-style act. It led to more tours, including one with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. America lit a fire in him. He met stars like Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. He even played shuffleboard with them on the ship. That moment mattered. Fairbanks became a role model. And Grant started to believe that maybe he didn't need to go back to England at all. He stayed. The rest of the troupe went home. He didn't. He worked odd jobs to survive: stilt walking, barker duties, and stage performances. He wore bright coats to draw crowds and stood outside amusement parks with sandwich boards. He even worked as a paid escort at high society parties. Every job pulled him closer to the stage and further away from Bristol. On stage, he learned how to perform. In private, he learned how to transform. He changed his accent, picking up bits of Cockney and mixing it with American sounds. He juggled, he danced. He invented a stage persona called Rubber Legs and performed in clown acts. Nothing came easy. Everything was earned. And slowly, he turned into someone new. He mastered the skill of becoming whoever the moment required. That ability would follow him all the way to the big screen. In 1932, the studio system in Hollywood was at its peak. Paramount Pictures needed a new leading man. Archibald Alec Leach, a young actor from Bristol, had already gained some attention in American vaudeville and smaller film roles. But the name Archie Leach didn't sound like a star. It sounded like a man who delivered milk or sold newspapers. Studio executives wanted someone who sounded sophisticated, so they renamed him Cary Grant. The name Cary came from a 1918 play called The Admirable Crichton, and Grant was chosen because it was short and strong. It wasn't just a name change, it was the creation of a new identity. The name Cary Grant became the mask, and behind it, Archie Leach slowly disappeared. He didn't legally change it until 1941, nearly a decade later. In 1933, Mae West changed everything. She was bold, she was in control, and she was already a star. When casting for She Done Him Wrong, she didn't leave the decision to the studio. She picked Cary Grant herself. He wasn't famous yet, but she saw something others didn't. She said he had virility, sexuality, and the presence of a gentleman. She wanted a man who could share the screen with her without fading into the background. The film was a gamble. The budget was modest, but it made over $2 million and saved Paramount from collapse. Their chemistry was electric. Grant became a household name overnight. Without Mae West, he might have been just another handsome face waiting for a break. Instead, he was launched like a rocket. That success didn't come out of nowhere. Just a year earlier, in Blonde Venus, 1932, Grant played opposite Marlene Dietrich. It was a smaller part, but people noticed him. His smooth presence and serious tone gave a hint of what he could become. Then, She Done Him Wrong cemented it. He played Captain Cummings, a character who balanced sharp wit and calm control. It wasn't just charm. He could hold the screen and carry weight. These roles gave him space to show emotional range. They proved he was more than a good face. Before he made people laugh in comedies, he earned his place in crime dramas. That foundation became his safety net. When Hollywood took a chance on him, it wasn't blind faith. It was a calculated move based on what he had already shown. As Grant moved forward, he built a persona that no one else could copy. He mixed British-Polish with American ease. His voice became a signature, part British, part something else entirely. It wasn't fully one thing or the other, and that made it fascinating. He looked sharp and carried himself with elegance, but he didn't take himself too seriously. Years in vaudeville had taught him timing. He could make a line land just by raising an eyebrow. Films like The Philadelphia Story and His Girl Friday put all those qualities on display. He didn't just speak fast, he made every word hit. He often added lines that weren't in the script. Directors let him. He worked closely with them to fine-tune scenes. His characters were charming, but there was always a flicker of something hidden, something unsure. That tension made him magnetic. By the late 1930s, Grant had found his sweet spot. Screwball comedies became his domain. Topper gave him momentum, but The Awful Truth made him a star. Irene Dunne and Grant played off each other perfectly. Their scenes felt alive, partly because Grant improvised. The film was nominated for 6 Oscars, though not for him. Then came Bringing Up Baby with Katharine Hepburn. At the time, it failed. People didn't get it. But later, it was praised as one of the funniest films ever made. By 1940, he was on fire. His Girl Friday redefined how fast dialogue could be. The Philadelphia Story added another layer of polish. These films didn't just entertain, they rewrote the rules. Grant didn't chase the camera. He made it follow him. His work with Alfred Hitchcock pushed him into darker waters. In Suspicion, 1941, Grant played a man you weren't sure you could trust. Was he dangerous or just misunderstood? Audiences couldn't tell, and that was the point. Hitchcock used Grant's charm as a weapon. Notorious, 1946, took things further. Paired with Ingrid Bergman, Grant played a spy caught between duty and love. His emotions were buried deep, and that made the film more powerful. Later, in To Catch a Thief, 1955, he returned to a lighter tone, playing a retired burglar on the Riviera. Grace Kelly matched him step for step. Then came North by Northwest, 1959. It had everything: danger, mistaken identity, and the famous chase across Mount Rushmore. Grant's cool under pressure gave the film its edge. Over 14 years, he made 4 films with Hitchcock. Each one added something new to his legacy. Strangely, the Oscars never truly embraced him. He was nominated twice. First for Penny Serenade in 1941, where he lost to Gary Cooper. Then for None But the Lonely Heart in 1944, where he lost to Bing Crosby. That second role was a risk. He played a Cockney drifter, gritty and grounded. But it didn't land the way his comedies did, and the Academy rarely rewarded comedy anyway. So despite starring in over 70 films, Cary Grant never won a competitive Oscar. In 1970, at age 66, he got an honorary award. He accepted it with grace, but never joined the Academy. He didn't complain, but the silence said enough. His body of work speaks louder than any golden statue. Financially, Grant's success was unmatched. From the late 1930s to the early 1960s, he stayed at the top. He starred in over 60 films. By the 1940s, he was earning hundreds of thousands per picture. Adjusted for inflation, many of his films crossed the $100 million mark. Operation Petticoat from 1959 was his biggest hit, but Gunga Din, Notorious, and North by Northwest were not far behind. In fact, 41 of his films passed the $100 million line. That's 64% of his entire career. His films had an average adjusted gross of $147.10 million. And the critics were with him too. Rotten Tomatoes rated 77% of his films as good. He had range, he had consistency, and he had the numbers to back it all up. Even decades later, his influence didn't fade. In 1999, the American Film Institute ranked Cary Grant as the second greatest male star of all time. Only Humphrey Bogart was higher. Grant's position on that list wasn't just about nostalgia. It reflected the lasting impact of his work. He competed with giants, James Stewart, Charlie Chaplin, John Wayne, but still stood near the top. Films like Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, Notorious, and North by Northwest are still studied, still admired, and still loved. He described his on-screen image as a disguise. But that disguise became the gold standard. It wasn't just something he wore, it was something the world wanted to believe in. And even now, it's something they still do. Cary Grant's first marriage started like a dream and ended in public disaster. He married Virginia Cherrill on February 9, 1934, in London. But within 7 months, they were done. By March 26, 1935, Cherrill had filed for divorce. She didn't hold back. She accused Grant of physical abuse and heavy drinking. Newspapers pounced on every detail. They published claims that he mocked her career, refused to pay her bills, and even followed her around with jealous suspicion. She asked for $1,000 a week from his paramount salary, an enormous amount during the Depression. Grant admitted the marriage affected him so deeply that he tried to take his own life just months after the wedding. Cherrill said he changed the moment they married. The worst fight happened on October 1, 1934. She fled to her mother's house and never came back. They tried to make it work again, but it kept falling apart. Eventually, both the marriage and the hope of fixing it were gone. His second marriage looked glamorous from the outside, but came with its own circus. On July 8, 1942, Grant married Barbara Hutton, one of the richest women in the world. At 21, she had inherited nearly $50 million, which would be nearly $900 million today. She lived big, luxury homes, designer jewelry, and constant travel. The press instantly labeled them Cash and Cary, hinting that Grant was after her money. But he wasn't. He signed a prenup that gave him nothing if they divorced. That decision was rare, especially in Hollywood. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover reportedly influenced it, wanting to protect Grant from scandal. The marriage didn't last. They divorced in 1945. Hutton struggled with insecurity and addiction. Grant kept his distance emotionally. Even so, they stayed friends after the divorce. People kept whispering about his motives, but his refusal to take a dime still stands out in a town built on gossip and gold. The next marriage went longer than any other, but ended with quiet heartbreak. Grant met Betsy Drake in 1947 on the RMS Queen Mary. They married on Christmas Day in 1949. Howard Hughes arranged it all. Their bond was deep. They read books on mysticism and tried yoga and transcendentalism. Drake even introduced him to LSD therapy. She believed it helped him face old trauma. They worked together on screen and behind the scenes. She wrote scripts for him, but something changed. In 1957, while filming The Pride and the Passion, Grant became obsessed with Sophia Loren. Drake flew to the set and discovered the affair. She was shattered. A year earlier, she had survived a shipwreck on the SS Andrea Doria. Now this. The betrayal cut deep. They stayed married for a few more years, but things never healed. Grant's distance and the infidelity pushed them apart. They divorced in 1962. Drake never remarried. Then came a much younger bride. In 1965, Grant married Deanne Cannon. He was 61, she was 28. They had a daughter, Jennifer, in 1966. But behind the public charm, Grant's need for control took over. Cannon later wrote that he dictated everything, from what she wore to how she spoke to others. He even corrected her thank you notes. One moment he was tender, the next cold and critical. He followed her from room to room, listing her flaws. He also pressured her to try LSD. He said it would free her from the past, but it left her shaken and broken. The sessions caused more harm than healing. Their marriage lasted 3 years. Cannon filed for divorce in 1968. Her memoir painted a painful picture. It revealed a man who used charm to hide deep insecurity. Fans were stunned. For Cannon, the charm had turned into a cage. Years earlier, Grant had started taking LSD himself. In 1958, Betsy Drake had introduced him to Dr. Mortimer Hartman in Beverly Hills. Hartman had permission from Sandoz Laboratories to use LSD for treating what he called garden-variety neurotics. Grant went through medical tests to prove he wasn't a suicide risk. Once approved, he began sessions. He had to avoid all sedatives for 24 hours and fast for 4 hours before. Afterward, he wasn't allowed to drive or be alone. Each session was supervised. Hartman believed LSD helped people relive early memories, even back to the womb. Grant wanted to understand his mother and forgive his father. The drug gave him access to those buried feelings. The process was intense, but it changed him. He didn't stop at a few sessions. Over the next 10 years, Grant took LSD more than 100 times. Some were in clinics, others were in private. He said the drug made him see himself clearly for the first time. He believed it brought peace, not chaos. He said it helped him accept his past, forgive his parents, and understand why he kept sabotaging his relationships. These weren't wild trips. They were quiet dives into pain and memory. Grant became one of the few major Hollywood stars to openly credit LSD with saving his life. But for Cannon, it was a nightmare. She said Grant forced her to join him in those sessions. Once, he even fed her the drug against her will. She was young, just 25, and overwhelmed. He told her the LSD would make her the perfect wife. Instead, it made her anxious, sleepless, and hollow. When she refused more sessions, he got angry. He told his agent to threaten her with divorce. Cannon finally walked away in 1968. Even then, she admitted she still had a soft spot for him. But she never forgot what he did. Cary Grant grew up believing his mother was dead. For over 20 years, no one told him otherwise. He carried that pain through childhood, thinking she had vanished forever. But in 1935, everything changed. His father was on his deathbed when he finally confessed the truth. Grant's mother, Elsie Leach, had not died. She was alive and had been locked away in the Bristol Lunatic Asylum since Grant was a boy. His father had committed her without telling him. The news hit like a thunderbolt. Grant was 31 years old and already famous in Hollywood. But this was bigger than any role he had ever played. He immediately left Los Angeles and made the long journey by ship back to England. When he saw her, the shock deepened. Elsie was in her late 50s. She looked fragile and lost, her hair gray, her voice thin. She didn't recognize him. She didn't even understand who he had become. He promised to get her out, and he did. By June of that year, she was released from the asylum. But too much time had passed. Her spirit had faded. Their connection, once strong, was now broken. Grant tried to rebuild it. He bought her a home. He visited her. He gave her comfort and care. But the distance between them could not be closed. Elsie had spent over 20 years in isolation. Her illness had changed her. She rarely spoke. She couldn't show affection. She was there, but unreachable. Grant's widow later said that their relationship remained difficult even after her release. Grant himself once said, "I always felt my mother rejected me. That pain never went away." He blamed himself, blamed the past, and carried guilt for something he could never fix. Even after finding fame, Grant wrestled with who he really was. He had changed his name, his accent, his whole identity. But he couldn't forget who he used to be. He once said, "I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be until finally I became that person." Or he became me. The line between Archibald Leach and Cary Grant never really disappeared. One was a scared boy from Bristol. The other was a polished legend. But inside, the conflict never stopped. Grant tried everything to find peace. He went to therapy. He even used LSD under medical supervision. Over 100 sessions with a doctor named Mortimer Hartman. He said those sessions helped him see the pain he had buried for decades. When Grant died in 1986, he left that doctor $10,000 in his will. It was his way of saying, "Thank you." Grant's struggle wasn't just about the past. It followed him into every part of his life. He had 5 marriages. Most ended in distance, frustration, or confusion. His 4th wife, Diane Cannon, said he was loving but difficult, generous but controlling. Even friends saw it. He would sometimes send bills to guests after they stayed at his house, not because he needed the money, but because he needed control. But everything changed in 1966. Grant became a father. He was 62. His daughter Jennifer was born to Diane Cannon. Grant called her his best production. He quit acting the same year and never returned to the screen. Instead, he filmed and documented every moment of her childhood. He kept the tapes and letters in a fireproof vault. He wanted to give her everything he never had. His final years brought something unexpected: love. In 1981, he married Barbara Harris. She was 31. He was 77. They met at a hotel conference. She worked in public relations. The connection was quiet and strong. Friends said he had never looked happier. Even his daughter approved. They lived away from the cameras, away from the press. It was the peace he had always chased. When Cary Grant died in 1986, he was 82 years old. In his will, he left $10,000 to Dr. Mortimer Hartman, the psychiatrist who treated him for years. This wasn't just a random gift. It was a thank you to the man who helped him through something most people never knew about. Under Hartman's care, Grant used LSD to explore those buried feelings. He said the drug helped him clean out the pain he had carried for years. He didn't hold back. He cried. He faced memories he had tried to forget. He saw where his fears and anger had come from. Then he started to change. He felt calmer, more peaceful, less like he was pretending to be happy. This therapy had such a strong effect on him that he talked about it publicly in 1959. That was rare. Very few people in Hollywood admitted to needing help, much less talked about taking a psychedelic drug in a doctor's office. But Grant didn't care about what people thought. He said LSD helped him break through the walls in his mind. It helped him become a better version of himself. Leaving $10,000 for Hartman in his will was his way of showing the world how much it mattered. It wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was a way of saying, "You saved me." Even more surprising than the therapy was how open Grant was about it. This was the 1950s and early 1960s. People didn't talk about depression or trauma in public. Stars were supposed to smile, pose for photos, and pretend everything was fine. But Grant didn't. He said he struggled with loneliness. He admitted that all the fame didn't fix what was broken inside. In private writings, he confessed he had trouble connecting deeply with anyone. He had spent years acting happy when he wasn't. He talked about LSD not like a drug, but like a tool. He said it helped him look at his life differently. It helped him remember things clearly and feel them in a new way. Because of him, other actors and artists started getting curious about this kind of treatment. Some even tried it themselves. And while many people still looked down on psychedelic therapy, Grant didn't back away.